Hold on. Hold on, y'all. Okay, we alive, mashallah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good night, everybody. Alhamdulillah. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Tonight is our 4th episode of Conversation with Band Pioneers. Today is Monday, February 20th, 2023, and we are approximately 30 days away from the holy month of Ramadan. Alhamdulillah. I pray that we all reach it. Inshallah. I mean, so tonight we have a special guest. We have Brother Muhammad Warith, Muhammad Abdul Warith, mashallah, and he will be our pioneer for the evening. And we have 2 co-hosts, BAMBAR co-hosts. We have Hadeiyah Amin, and we have Brother Farouk Hunter. Alhamdulillah, assalamu alaikum, y'all. And inshallah, we're going to dive into this interview. We have a lot to cover, alhamdulillah. So let's get into it. Hadeiyah, you want to go in for the intro?
Yes. So introducing Brother Muhammad Abdul Warith, known for being a senior advisor of the Jawala Scout Youth Leadership Program for over 40 years. He was born and raised in North Philadelphia. In 1969, at the age of 19, he was drafted into the Vietnam War. After returning from the war and living a very tumultuous life, he accepted Islam in 1973 and has been a Muslim for almost 50 years. Brother Muhammad is known throughout many communities throughout the United States and has been affiliated with the Dar ul Islam movement as well as the El Zadeen village in New Jersey. He has 6 biological children and has raised 8 children. He has 14 grandchildren, 5 great-grandchildren. Brother Muhammad has always been a seeker of knowledge and has a particular love of sociology and studying the relationship between individuals and society. He holds an associate degree in business administration from Pierce College in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, plus an additional year of mini studies. Introducing Brother Muhammad.
Yay, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Alhamdulillah, it's a pleasure having you here. It's an honor to be able to interview you. And inshallah, I hope that everybody that's tuning in gets to know who you are and your legacy, inshallah.
Alhamdulillah.
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 So jumping right in, Brother Muhammad, we would love to know about your childhood, where you were born and how was life growing up.
Alhamdulillah. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. All praise is due to Allah. We praise him, we seek his help, we seek his forgiveness, and we seek refuge in Allah from the evil, from within ourselves and our evil deeds. Whoever Allah guides, there's none to misguide him. Whoever Allah leads astray, there is none to guide him. I testify that there is no sovereign, no God, except Allah alone, without any partners, and that Muhammad, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, peace and blessings be upon him, is his servant and his messenger. Greetings and thanks for the opportunity to share with you brothers and sisters in regard to your efforts in BAM, B-A-M, Black American Muslim Pioneers. Great, I think it's a great endeavor. I admire it, and I welcome and honor the invitation to come and share a little bit of the history about myself and my relationship to the development of Islam in the country. So inshallah, in regard to your first question, I would like to say I was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, North Philadelphia, in the year 1948. 74 years old. I'll be 75 this year. And hopefully, inshallah, I can push out another 5. If I get 80, I'm happy. Inshallah.
Alhamdulillah.
Well, alhamdulillah. Our address was on 17th and Norris in North Philadelphia. I am one of 5 children that my mother had. 3 boys and 2 girls. I was the second born of the 5 children.
So how was that, being the second oldest of the family?
Well, I kind of had to take a lot of responsibility because my mother and father fought a lot when we were young, and my father left when I was about 4 years old. So I grew up without a father, without a role model. And my probably first job was when I was about 12, going on 13, in a chicken store, with a little chicken store that sold chickens, and I used to go over there and cut up the chickens for the guy. That was my first job. So I started working like 12, 13 early. So that's what it was like. I took responsibility early. I was the second oldest, so I had to look out for everybody. And it was a challenge.
How was your education during those years? Middle school, high school?
I was kind of a little bit of a smart guy, but I was easily influenced by the bad guys. So that combination was where I was at. I could get good grades. However, I would mess up in terms of behavior and, skipping class, cutting out, doing the wrong kind of thing. So I didn't have that role model. And as a result, a lot of the decisions that I made weren't good decisions. They weren't guided decisions. So as a result, I did wind up getting into a lot of trouble.
Were there any other potential male role models, like grandparents or any mentors in the city that you were able to turn to?
No, not at all. I had a coach in high school. I played basketball, I played football, and playing sports is dynamic. And right now, today, I really emphasize that for high school kids and middle school kids, because sports it's like a buffer. So I had a relationship with my coach, which kind of helped me a little bit, but I got more influenced by a role model in my neighborhood who was a drug dealer. So that's how that turned out.
So you said it was around 19 years old that you were drafted into the Vietnam War. What was that experience, being brought into that at such a young age?
Well, prior to that, I was managed to get out of high school, and we were coming up through that. We gang warred, we got in trouble, the drugs came in, we started doing that. From gang warring and selling drugs, we went into what was called a club. We called Club Commodores. It was 13 of us. So we hustled and things like that. And all during that period of time, I lost a lot of my friends in the drug trade, because we were, Temple University was the institution that North Philadelphia is near Temple University Hospital, and Temple University College, where just recently you heard the incident of the young man shooting the security guard. This is just recent news. I don't know if you heard it or not in Philadelphia. And a very, very bad area. So during all of that, that crisis, whatever, the draft was going on, and the anti-war, 1967. 1968. And I wasn't really paying attention, in terms of what was really going on in the world. Again, like, I was into the streets. So either I was going to go to jail, penitentiary, or I was going to take the draft. The draft came, greetings, a letter came, this is your Uncle Sam. You are now inducted into the Armed Forces of the United States. And my mother said, you going somewhere. So that's where I went. And that's how I got into the military at 18, 19.
SubhanAllah, that is a
So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he paves a path. That's the most significant point of our discussion, is that he prepares his servants for what they need, as they come further down the line. And inshallah, if it is will that we continue to exist and he plants us in a certain position, he prepares us for that. He prepares us for that. And all of these incidents was preparing me for that.
Sheikh Mohammed, Fort Bragg, I've spent some time in Fort Bragg at CARICOM. And I know that, and at FORCECOM at Fort Bragg, and it's a city, Fort Bragg, I know folks don't know this, but Fort Bragg is like 45 miles from one end to the other end. It's a whole city. And I can imagine that had to create a whole nother lifestyle, being inducted into the Army through Fort Bragg. What was that experience like in contrast to what you had just left? I know that the decision necessarily wasn't, oh, the Army's so great. It was, I'm taking this path. But as you got into it, as you went through boot, as you went through your specialist training, what was that like? What was that experience in contrast to the life you had before?
Well, so with the draft and during that period of time, there were a number of African Americans from different neighborhoods and different areas in Philly that were also being inducted in that same shipment. So there were brothers that were in there from Philly that I knew, even via gang relations, that were being inducted. It was amazing. When I got down to the draft thing to get shipped out, I saw a lot of guys that, I really knew. So we connected. And so we kind of like went from Philly to North Click, like that, so we all kind of sort of adjusted together. And on the same tip, they knew somebody from Philly. They knew I was from up north. They knew we were from up north. And so in that process, we used to get into some battles, and I got hit in the head with a trash can one night. And I'm talking about, the
rough.
transition from Philly to North Click was like, it was drama. But we survived. But one of the things that I learned more than anything was racism. I never knew nothing about racism in the hood. When I'm in Philly, it's all us. It was some white boys up in North Nice Town, and we, throw them around, but we were always the majority. But when I got to North Click, then I started learning about racism and white folks. It was really, really, really interesting.
Wow. So from that angle, when I was in boot, I remember having a petty officer Pip. That's what the one came to me. He was like, "This ain't our military, man." He said, "If you feel uncomfortable here, it's because you're supposed to." Did you feel that? Like when you talk about that racism, I was a different character. I came up from the Darl, so joined the military. CC come in, I'm making Salah, and he's screaming. It didn't mean nothing to me. I stare him down like he was trash. But I'm just wondering how that experience happened coming from Philly.
Right.
Dealing with these characters who have authority, right, to throw you in the brig, to cause problems in your life, and now you're rolling with the same clique that came out of Philly, and you're in the military. I know there's still people, a lot of you don't know. I know in the military, like my father was in Vietnam, he was still selling dope as an MP. So I know a lot of that stuff still exists. How was that? Can you describe like even just one story from that experience that would just encapsulate, kind of that whole vibe?
Yeah, we were in two different areas. How old are you?
I'm 45.
Right. Okay. So when you went into the military, you were Muslim?
I was Muslim. My father was in Vietnam. He was in the Air Force.
Okay, during this time. Yeah, okay. Well, anyway, during my time at 19 years old in 1969, 68, I was really still sort of like disengaged. I wasn't settled yet. It was in my developmental stage of beginning to try to see what my life was going and what I was doing. All I was used to was the streets. So I really couldn't put together anything. But the impact, like I said, of racism hit me. You know what I mean? And then I started adding up this concept in my head called double standard, right? And so as I'm doing this, I'm continuously building up me an awareness of really who I was. You know what I mean? As an African American, you know, in America. So all that happened in coming into basic training. The pictures that I had, we were in basic training, and then from basic training, we will have one purpose: go to AIT, get an MOS, and go to Vietnam. So that's where our heads were. You know, not time for a whole lot of things to, you know, try to figure it out.
Wow, this is amazing.
So when you were rolling out of, like, when you got through that whole process, like what role did you serve in Vietnam? Like what was your
Yeah, my MOS was 72 feet 20, which is considered communications, right?
Yes,
I was a radio guy, communication guy, and I was blessed because a draftee to get that was like, you know, you had to be on, you know, whatever. Everybody was going directly to the grunts. So eventually I wound up in the grunts, of course,
Wow.
but I started off, you know, with communication, 70 B220. And from there, you know, I got in, you know, some things in country and racism, things like that or whatever. But whatever it was, I wound up being, you know, demoted down and almost sent to LBJ and losing rank and going back out in the field as a grunt.
Wow.
Yeah, how long did you serve in Vietnam?
My tour was supposed to be 12 months, but if you did 13 months, you could ETS. That means end of term of service. If you added a month to your normal tour as a draftee, only because you were a draftee, right? You could ETS, you could get out. You could actually get out, but I got hurt, so that none of that never happened for me. I wound up going to the hospital.
Wow. How was that like coming back home? How was the atmosphere at that time? The social atmosphere at that time? You know, there was a lot of anti-war, you know, rhetoric. How was the atmosphere at that time in Philadelphia? Did you experience like hate in your face, you know, like in regards to you serving, being drafted and being, you know, in Vietnam?
No, and the way I came home was a combination of a lot of turmoil and trauma. I got wounded, I got hurt, and I was hurt, but again, I got resent back out. And so when I got resent back out, my brother got shot and killed back here, you know, in the US. You know, me and my brother were doing, you know, some black market stuff in terms of he send me, I send him kind of thing. And he was involved in the drug trade. And so he got killed. And so they contacted me and told me my brother was dying because he hadn't died completely yet. So they want to prepare for me to come home, right? And I was in the middle of the jungle. I mean, I'm talking about, I was out of it. So they shipped me directly from there in a matter of a few days back to the US to his funeral. So I was like, tore up, you know, so that's what my entry was like back. So from there, my injuries were worse, so they shipped me to West Point Army Hospital for about 5-6 months after that.
Okay. So let's get into your journey to Islam. When did you first hear about Islam?
You ready for this?
Yes. Yes.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prepares us for our journey, like he did Malcolm. He prepared Malcolm for that. You see, so he was able to do that. All of us, you know, were being prepared by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All right, so after Vietnam, and I came in or whatever, we were still not focused. I had not run into Islam yet. And we were cleaning up the area from drugs. There was a new drug out. It wasn't new, it's been around, called Monster. It's like an amphetamine. And it was just like heroin now or crack. This is all before crack, 1971, okay? 72. So a lot of the white people in South Philadelphia were selling it, right? And a lot of the people in our community were getting addicted to it. So what we did is we raided the spot, whatever. So nevertheless, as a result of that case, I got sent to the penitentiary, okay? Beginning in 1972, okay? I got 3 year to 10-year sentences, you know, out of that. So I'm still not Muslim, okay? So I go to court to what is called Holmesburg. Holmesburg is a transition where you keep going back and forth to court to either you get convicted, go to the penitentiary, or you get released on bail, or your case gets thrown out. In Holmesburg, I was there for a longer period of time because we were trying to fight the case based on the fact that I was a recent return from Vietnam, okay? So they were trying to work through that. And so my case kept being pushed back. So in Holmesburg, one day in April, I'll never forget it, word came, the whole jail was locked down, okay? Locked down, okay? What's going on, right? So they said that the deputy warden and the warden had just got killed, okay? Yeah, they just got killed, yes, whatever. So, wow, it's really amazing. Well, so what happened, right? So what you found out was that it was 2 guys that did it, and they was Muslim, right? So I said, oh, they Muslim. What's a Muslim? You know what I mean? So I said, what was it all about? And so he said it was about the fact that they wouldn't give them Juma. You know, they had a letter in, a proposal in for Juma, and they couldn't get Juma, whatever. So I said, wow. And so that kind of like stuck in my head, right? Because I said it must be really something serious, you know, about why and how these brothers could do that. Both of the brothers had life already, you know what I mean? But as a result, that stuck in my head. So now I get my case, I get my time, I go to the penitentiary. Once I get in the penitentiary, we go into quarantine, okay? What is called quarantine. In quarantine, you know, you basically wait to get all everything assigned to you and all that. Now that's when I started reading, okay? So as I'm reading this Islam, right? What it really mean, you know? And I picked up a few books. And so the whole time I'm reading about this Islam. So as I'm in quarantine and I come off, I noticed these brothers that were on the block, right? They had these long brown coats on, you know, and long raggedy beards, right? I said, man, God. So somebody said, they Muslims, right? So I said, oh, really? Those are Muslims? They said, yeah. I said, wow, let me check them out. So all my homies, right? Because again, I'm not Muslim yet, right? I don't know anything. They're telling me, they call me by my nickname, which you'll never know, okay? I never tell you.
Oh,
I thought it was about to come out. It was like,
man,
they
leave
call him
them
by my
guys
nickname.
alone, man. I know you ain't thinking about being no Muslim. I said, no, man, I just want to talk to him, right? And find out what give him that kind of courage, right? So, you know, I go down on the block, right? And, you know, scrumpy look, whatever. And I walked up to a brother, never get it in my life, brother named Sharif, man. I walk up, I said, excuse me, I got this book, man. Could you tell me about that? Brother turned around and looked at me with so much gentleness, right? And kindness. You know, those brothers were the kindest people I had met in my life. Okay. And that impressed me so much, right? I said, man, I think I'm gonna do this Islam thing. I'll come back, you know, my cell with my homie said, no, you ain't, because they figured in a lot of cases, people that come to jail join the various groups for protection. I didn't need that because we had the jail. And so they're telling me we got the jail. And we only had the jail because we had the narcotics in the jail. If you run the narcotics in the jail, you basically own the jail, right? So it was no need for me to seek Muslims or Islam for protection. So they know I didn't need that. So their whole thing was like, man, what are you doing? But I was being motivated inside constantly. And I read about society and the relationship before. Like I said, my background is sociology and the relationship between the individual and society, and the fact that God, Allah, I already, worship God. When my mother used to take us to church every day, and if I got none of that, I got the fact that God was real, and I used to get in trouble and a call on God, so I had a relationship. So I knew who God was, but I never could tie it into my way of life. And Islam made that clear. So basically that's how I got introduced to it. And from that point on, I came down with the brothers, we joined together, we started having class in the yard, and I took my Shahada.
MashaAllah.
November 1973.
73. What type of studying did you do while you were incarcerated? What was the ideology of those particular brothers?
Most of the brothers that were in there, that were in the prison, the brothers that I spoke about that I originally met, and the brothers that were in the prison at that time was from that era, of the Black Panther Party, of the DAR, Black Liberation Army, of those African Americans who were fighting for the rights of Black people in the streets, whether they were feeding the hungry, whether they were standing out in protest, whatever. These were the Black men that were in there. So these were the type of brothers. A lot of them were Black Panthers that were down doing life sentences, and these were my Jesus. Russell Schultz, Harun Schultz was my primary teacher and gave me my Shahada, right? And we all know his revolutionary impact on the world, during the 60s and during the 70s. Rahim Allah, may Allah have mercy on the soul. So these were the kind of people. And the kind of classes were oriented to Quran, Sunnah, and amazingly, these brothers were learning Arabic in the prison. They were learning. Now, let me tell you, they was learning Arabic in the prison, all right? They were learning physical protection, of course. They were learning how the society works, and at the same time, trying to get out of the jail, all right? That means hiding in the trash truck, trying to get over the wall. You understand? This was the mentality of these African Americans, resistance. That was the climate during that time, during Farouk's father's time. That's what they were. I was a young guy in that era, but that's what I experienced.
Wow. What year you took Shahada again? You said
November 1973.
Okay. And you remember the exact month too, subhanAllah.
Oh yeah, I can't remember the day, but I know that month.
MashaAllah. Unforgettable.
Now, at the same time, the DAR was moving. The DAR, 1968, right? 1982, right? They were moving. Okay, strong. So I was incarcerated during that time. Okay. And so when I came out to the later stage of that where they had divided. I think I explained that to you.
So when you came out of Holmesburg, when did you get out of Holmesburg? Or did you go from Holmesburg into prison and then come out of prison? Like how did that roll out?
I did, yeah, I did half of my time. They gave me credit for half of my time in Holmesburg. We were trying, then I went to Greater Ford Penitentiary for the remainder.
So when you got out of jail, it was what year? Say it again.
It was what year when you got out of jail? I got out of the penitentiary in 1970. It's kind of complicated. 75 and then 76. All right, yeah, 75, right? and I got extradited back and got out and did another 12 months, 13 months, and then got out in 76.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So I've had conversations with Sheikh Abdul Hadi in Philly about the Darl and how it started there and how it grew, and even the split when Sheikh Jelani came down and everything else. And, you know, Sister Mukhtara has written down a little piece. I feel the need to read it verbatim.
But before you do that, can you get into the life after conversion? Where that part?
So I guess that does make sense. Are you talking about, because there's two lives, right? I mean, you had a life, you had what, almost 2 to 3 years in prison after conversion, before having a life outside of prison and conversion, you know? And I guess one of the questions would be is—
Not 3 years, probably about 20 months, maybe 18, 20 months, something like that, 21
Yes,
months. Yeah, because remember, I was in quarantine in Greater Fort. So that's right after I got transferred, got sentenced to Greater Fort from the 18 months of going back and forth to trial in Holmesburg. And Holmesburg was where I began thinking about Islam.
How was that being, you know, the difference between the life of being a non-Muslim in prison versus being a Muslim in prison?
It was almost like a rebirth, or like a light came on that triggered things inside of me that were there all the time, but just overshadowed by my, you know, attachment to negativity and friends and the influence of friends, you know. So I felt more independent. I felt more, you know, I was reading more. I began to get in touch with my real spirit, you know, the spirit of revolution inside of me, determination, self-determination. These triggers start going off. I started reading. I started understanding how America really works. I started worrying a little bit more about the relationship between the individual and his creator, right? And that relationship, all right, to sovereignty, law, man-made law. All these things I'm beginning to light up and learn about and becoming inspired by.
Let me ask you a question. So so what are some things, some habits that you found like challenging to stop, right? Like, you know, you become Muslim, they tell you can't have pork, the women's, the alcohol. Did you have any challenges adapting to?
Of course, yes.
Okay.
Of course, yeah, of course. See, in the penitentiary, you really not tested. So you go right into the movement. Nowadays may be different, but back then you go into the movement and you down. You got it. You training, all right. You all right. You learning, right. You hooked up. You got a plan. When I break, this is what I'm gonna do. This I'm gonna serve the community. That's what you into, right? But you don't have those other vices. You don't have those other things, the nafs, that you have to deal with. Yeah. So one of mine, of course, was women. You know,
okay.
and I knew I was going, you know, I didn't even know. And it's deep how you think you know, but you don't know until you test it.
SubhanAllah.
And then you be flipping, you know, and like, oh yeah, you know, crazy. Yes, but women was definitely one.
Okay.
But returning back to Jahilil and associating with the knuckleheads again, that was over.
No more being on the block.
So, Brother Muhammad, you came out. I know a lot of brothers that came into Islam out of prison, came out and were challenged by different things. They had a little period of time of adjustment, you know, like where the old life, maybe not that part of the dunya, with hanging out with the fellas and stuff, but like you said, your particular naf, you know, was you had to teach yourself how to curb yourself from it. Realistically, how long was that adjustment period? How long was that period of being able to just get to the point where you were like, look, no way but the Islamic way, the heck with everything else?
It's a constant. It's a constant thing. It's like the nafs, you know, is connected, you know, to you, your feelings, your desires, what you want, and the reality of it is that faith and belief, it alternates. You know, sometimes you're real strong, right? Fired up. Sometimes, you know, you're weak, right? So it depends on how you place yourself environmentally that gives you the strength for a good practice. And in some cases, if you get, let's say, fasting Monday and Thursday, I mean, certain du'as you say when you come in the house, right? Certain kinds of treatment that you do with others, certain community service functions that you do. And like for me, working with youth, things like that, they give you more of a consistent, you know, protection and guarding than us, you know, because you don't want to be contradictory, you know, in terms of what you're doing, but you're always challenged. You know, the nafs will always challenge you, and you have to understand your weaknesses and guard yourself from them. Because the Lord warned us that Shaitan, he know us, you know, and he know how he can get us. And if we're a strong believer, he coming at us, you know, so we just got to keep those practices up, you know, in order to do that. So it's a lens, it's still going on, you know, you never get out of that.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah, MashaAllah. So the family and friends, you know, you came out of jail. I know that there was challenge around the family and accepting that change. How was your family? How was your mother, you know, into the change to Islam? How were your other friends, those people who were close to you? How did they receive and accept that? And how was that transition as well?
They were really like overwhelmed. The climate was also changing like during that time. Again, because once again, you know, the Dar was live, Islamic Party out of DC, Jamaat Islami, MSA, ISNA. Islam was everywhere. So a lot of my old friends and different people, they had become Muslim. Some had become Muslim, had at least sympathetic to it. But my mother and my family and them, they was like, oh man, thank God. You know what I mean? They were like, I'm glad something got that boy, because you know what I mean? My sister told me I had 9 lives. Okay, but that's the reality of it. You know what I mean? So that's what always inspired me to work for the youth, is because I was in this situation where I was a youth without a role model. And I got twisted. So my life is dedicated to that, you know, because I understand it, you know, point blank.
Alhamdulillah.
What about the folks? Like you said that, you know, hanging out with the friends and on the block was over, but how was that? How did that actually go down? I mean, you're back in the neighborhood, you got the regular folks that come over. How did that play out? Like, you know, I mean, how was that interaction? I mean, how did you throw it down? I'm not in that no more.
Okay. One of the guys that was involved in the shooting with my brother from before or whatever, right? Him and some of the other friends, they were there or whatever, and they weren't Muslim at the time. So probably, alhamdulillah, now they Muslim, as a matter of fact, today. But at that point, they weren't Muslim or whatever. And they felt an obligation to kind of like bring me in and keep me close, you know, or whatever. But I made it a habit, right? That I would go to the masjid. You know what I mean? I would go to the masjid and do that. I would not, you know, the things that they were doing, you know, I just did the best, put the best effort forward I could, right? To get to the masjid and get to class, because I knew that's what I needed to be a part of the movement. So it was a matter of discipline at that point, and I did it. And they always knew that, you know, once I came home, you know, don't call me that name no more. I'm Muhammad.
Yeah, because that other name was.
I ain't telling you that. I'll never tell you that.
That was good.
I tried. I tried.
People listening that know. It's people that's listening to this podcast, whatever it is, that know.
Sheikh Mama, I had to try. You know, so which masjid was it that you were frequenting? Sheikh Muhammad?
Brother Muhammad?
Which masjid were you going to? I think we lost your audio.
Okay. It's not muted, but
No. Brother Muhammad, I think we lost your audio. Yeah, we can hear you talk. I mean, we can see you talking, but we can't hear you talking.
can you hear us, Brother Muhammad? No? I don't know if you can hear us.
Brother Muhammad, can you hear us at all?
No?
No.
I don't think so.
Sister Mukhtara, do you have his phone number?
Yes. He might have to log out and come back in, I think.
Yeah, I think you might have to call him and tell him that.
Okay. Let's see. Hold on, y'all. I'm just gonna try to see if I can. Sound like
Yeah, I lost you.
can you hear us or no? Okay. So he's gonna try to log out and come back in.
Okay.
Inshallah. He couldn't hear us. Okay. Oh, there he goes. Okay. Amina. Who's Amina?
That's a
Dun 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 dun.
backup singer.
Okay. Who's Amina? Sound like
You just set the link out to
That's the wrong
everybody.
person.
Oh, no, that's Brother Muhammad.
Oh, it's him on another.
Oh. Yeah, okay.
There you
So
go.
then I
Yeah,
can
yeah,
take
I
the
am.
other one out. Okay.
Okay, we good?
Yes.
Yeah, we good.
All right.
Yes, sir. Your name comes up as Amina now. You know, I mean, I know it's 2023.
Told you I had a problem.
But, you know.
It's okay.
MashaAllah.
It's okay. Alhamdulillah. We're back in business. Alhamdulillah. So where do we stop? We talked about.
So we stopped right at the point where you were telling us how you went to the masjid in order to avoid, you know, hanging out in the typical places that you had in the Jahiliyyah. And my question to you was like, what masjid was it that you were frequenting? Which masjid were you going to?
Okay, it was called Masjid Mujahideen. It was a split from the Dar run by Imam Ali Ahmed. And it was in North Philly. And when I came in, my intention was to come to the Dar on Osage, 52nd Street, Osage, West Philadelphia, before I knew about the split. So I went to North Philadelphia, which was Ali Ahmed and 19th Street. And they had a clothing thing that they were selling out of step van, out of trucks. They were involved in business, setting up stores. And that's where I got engaged at. So that took my time. I employed then. And immediately I started to follow my interest in outdoor camping, hiking, fishing, with scouting. And I immediately set up a program with the brothers from DC called the World Islamic Scouting Movement. And that was in 1977.
1977. So just to backtrack a little bit about the Dal. Of course, we're familiar with the Dal, but like I said, I'm gonna read Sister Mukhtara. Is it okay to read it now, Sister Mukhtara?
Absolutely. For those who don't know, you know, what the Dar was, yes.
Okay.
Thanks.
The Dar Islam known as the, see, I know Sister Mukhtara is an organized individual. She's got all this laid out beautifully, you know, and so I'm just trying to follow, make sure, you know, we could get the back. The Dar Islam known as the Dar was one of the most significant grassroots movements established by African-American Sunni Muslims in the United States. The founding members of the Dar al-Islam came from the Islamic Mission of America, founded by in 1939 by Sheikh Dawood Ahmed Faisal, which I'm going to add, a lot of people don't know, that was the first mosque in the United States that Sheikh Dawood created, and Sayyida Khadija Faisal of Brooklyn, New York. The Dar movement have branches throughout the country. And of course, the Dar movement was not necessarily founded by Sheikh Dawood Faisal. It was a split from his student, which was Imam Yaqi Abdul Karim. You know,
Abdul Karim. Yep.
So the question that I have is, you mentioned a split. I think we can go, I wanted to kind of go into this a little more, but well, actually, I think we should back up, right? Because I know that the Dar movement split many times, actually. And
yes, a couple of times. Well, go ahead.
So no, please, you know.
Not so much an external, split to dismantle. All right, you had differences and separation in methods. In Philly, Ali Ahmed, you know, and you had Zayd, you know, and Ali Ahmed being in the head of it was located uptown Philly. And then when Ali and them decided to go more further into business, into this clothing thing, Zayd and them decided that they wanted to focus their efforts with the rest of the National Jamaat down on Osage Avenue. So when I came in, Ali and them was doing the clothes. So that's where I was there. But I also went out to 52nd Street every now and then to see those brothers, beautiful brothers. Dar was thorough, really, really thorough. They had established so much. You know, they had so much, like 71, they established a Muslim school in Brooklyn. 71, their publication, Jihad Akbar, remember that? There's a newspaper publication that they established, right? 1971, the first halal meat store also established in Brooklyn, right? They established the Dar al-Islam Musk Incorporated, which was oils, incense, all those things. And in 68 and on into 82 was the National Network of Masters throughout the country. So the Dar was strong. The Dar had economy, the Dar had military, the Dar had, these were African Americans that came into Islam with vision. You know, they directly understood La ilaha Muhammadan Rasulullah. They took it literally and practically. Where neighborhoods were bad, you know, Yasin Mosque in New York. I wasn't there, I don't know. I was out of high school, getting in trouble, whatever, at the height of what I'm telling you right now. But there's a book out that I recommend as well, if you want to look further into the Dar, right? And it's called Dar al-Islam, and it was written by Dr. El-Hajj Idris Abdul Muhammad, right? He wrote it in 2006, January, published in New York City, right? And it indicates standing strong and moving straight ahead with the Dar al-Islam movement in racist America. That was the title. And the book, it notes a lot of the founders, a lot of the brothers that were involved in it, including Amin Abdul Latif, Imam Sharif Abdul Rashid, of course, Imam Asim Abdul Rashid, Rahim Allah. Also, as you said, Sheikh Saeed Abdul Hadi, who you spoke with. These were vigilant, dynamic people. Imam Mutawaf Abdul Shahid from Cleveland, Ohio. These were the members of the Dar. and many more other brothers.
Muhammad, like going down that path about the Dal and learning the Deen, and I had a conversation with Imam Ahmed Ali recently, and he was saying how Imam Yahya just deeply emphasized. He said, when they started the Dal down in Florida, it was all he said he was all gun ho to build this, build that, and Imam was like, establish a salat together.
Yeah.
That's the bond. That's what's going to get you. So when it came down to the educational element of Islam and your path, and I still in my house, I have tons of those green and blue photocopied books that were given, about the classes. I still memorize Mubadi to Islam, when it came to, I live on that page. Even the books I've written, I put the pieces of Mubadi to Islam inside those books. The question that I have is how was your learning path? How was about learning the Deen? Like, how did you manage your time? How did you, what was your, between work and everything else and doing other things you had to do? What was that, the learning portion of it, the educational element of it coming into it?
One of the things, excuse me, that wasn't very important was realizing what you were bringing to the movement. What was your strength? This is what and how you would spend your time within the Jamaat, and understanding what the Jamaat needs, being involved in one committee or the next committee to understand what role you play. And again, identify with the youth. So Imam Asim Abdul Rashid, in 1981, he appointed me to the Jawala Scouts, me and a brother named Rashad Bey. And to today, we still doing it. Rahimullah, Imam Asim Abdul Rashid, he was the commander of the Jawala Scouts at that time. So to answer your question, it was identifying your role within the movement. What are you bringing to the movement? Okay, all right. The Dawah Lillah, the Dawah that we see, the movement was focused in terms of establishing the abode of Islam. Very different today. For you at your age at 45 or whatever, I wish all the brothers your age had held on to that, because their fathers was in that crew, right under me or with me, you know what I mean, or over me. And you, like you said, you still got the books, you still got the thing. But what happened was that generation, they left it. They left the vision and the concept of Darul Islam, establishing abode of Islam. The fact that, you know what I mean, our mission in this country and throughout the world is to establish the Deen of Allah. You can't live in a society, because Islam is not a subculture. It's a Deen. You got to be able to establish sovereign law based on it. You can't have nobody telling your children they can be bisexual or you can do this or that, and then, oh, just ignore that. That's not for us, we Muslim, right? It's more than a religion, and the Dar understood that, and that's why, I was dedicated and committed to it. So I took the role of teaching the children that same concept. But yeah, that's what it was, just understanding what my role was. Not trying to do everything, trying to be a scholar, trying to whatever. I learned enough Deen, all right, so that I could teach to the kids and I could maintain my family, because I identified myself as a soldier. You can be a soldier, you can be a scholar, right? Or you can be a warrior. You got to identify what your role is. Now, like certain brothers, they understand, they train, because they're supposed to protect. Other brothers understand scholarship. They have to learn the Quran. So it's about identifying your role and moving forward with that.
So tell me a little bit about that. Like how that seems like a consistent messaging, and it has to have a mechanism that's actually delivered and engaged. So how did that come? How, you're saying that you had to find your role. So I'm hearing the basis of an induction process, right? I'm hearing that, you know, basically there was a spot where when you came in, you were educated to do certain things, to find your role, to define that. That induction process into the Dar, that process of coming in and, you know, getting that messaging through to you, was that done through mentorship? Was that, what was your path? What was, how, when you came into the Dar, how was that induction?
I was prepared for that fi sabilillah. Most importantly, I thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to prepare me to understand that. You see, I was able to understand that. And the brothers that I sat up under, and again, as I said, Imam Asim Abdul Rashid, the Imam of Masjid Mujahideen, Rahimullah, the commander of the Jawala Scouts, was very, very, very good in our classes and interaction in regard to the direction of the Jamaat. And understanding the direction of the Jamaat, right, coincided with my heart in regard to establishing the Board of Islam, that I knew I don't want to coexist with any other society, that the only thing that I wanted to do was strive to establish Islam. I understood history, understood about the Ottoman Empire, understood when Muslims lost control in 1924, right? I understood that with the last caliphate, right? And I understood the reasons for that. All this happening all around the same time with other things going on. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guided me, fi sabilillah. He helped me understand, you know what I mean, and learn how my fitting in was to go. And again, like I said, hear and obey is significant in regard to leadership, and leadership, following leadership in terms of, and Imam Asim, Rahimullah, his spirit was dynamic. And what you have today is the spirit of brothers being compromised under the face of man-made law. Sayyid Qutb said that. He said that, you know, when men submit themselves under man-made law for a certain period of time, willingly, right, their spirits get broken. You see, and that's what you see, a bunch of men with broken spirits. You see, and all we have to do is get on the backs of those brothers, like your father, brothers before me, and whatever, that already set the path. In the penitentiaries, you couldn't do what you wanted to do. In the penitentiaries, because of the Dar, Muslims could wear kufis, sisters could wear hijabs, visits, all that stuff was done and established by courageous men and women, right, from the Dar. That's why I said when I seen that happen I know it sounds strange, but when I seen that happen in Holmesburg, my whole heart lit up. Because, you know, I know what life is like. I know what I'm against in the streets. You know, I know what my enemy is doing to me. I understand slavery. I know what slavery did. So everything just brings you right to the point to where your commitment is stronger, and it's all fi sabilillah.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah, MashaAllah. Yeah, may more of us hold tight to completing the missions that your generation started. And my life is dedicated to that. But I do have another question. So you coming into the Dar, you dealing with coming to the mosque as a way of keeping away from the fitna of different people that you're hanging with. But then you still have this woman naf, and the woman naf got to be checked. So, you know, my question would be then, what was the marriage process like, and how soon and early did you actually hit that? You know, what was the process of courting, the whole nine? Like, you know, what was your process to getting married and having your first Islamic marriage?
Well, coming from Jahiliyah, you need a sponsor, you know, as a new Muslim brother. You need an experienced brother, possibly a married brother, right, to guide you. So let's say, you know, I came out, you know, you whatever, and okay, I need to get a wife. If you think you don't need one, you're gonna get in trouble, period. All right, so, all right, you need a sponsor for that. You need a guide or whatever. And in my case, you know what I mean? You know, it was a brother named Rashid Abdul Hadi, my man. And he, you know, he took me up and said, look, man, you know, it's a couple sisters, boom, boom, whatever, hook that up, whatever. And unfortunately, you know what I mean? I wasn't able to get married right away. But then eventually I did get married. But to answer your question, to have a sponsor, another brother, cooperation. See, it's the ummah, the jamaat, the brotherhood is awliya. It's like awliya, you're supporting each other, you know, helping guardian of each other, men to men, right? In some cases. And so the marriage thing for a brother coming from the dunya, he needs something. If what you find is a brother that doesn't have that, he starts making some mistakes. And it's only because in a lot of cases, like young guys right now, they don't understand why they can't have a girlfriend. They don't understand it. You know, there's no tarbiyah and tazkiyah in regard to their category, especially adolescents, age 9 to 18. What kind of training is taking place that a young brother understands that he don't need a girlfriend? Or how does he handle the issue of puberty, right? Versus desire for sex versus not being able to afford a wife. You know, and all these things are the things that we as brothers have to work out, you know, as well, inshallah. But yeah, support, you know, of each other, I think helps that.
So break it down, Sheikh, just a little bit more depth. Now I know Sheikh Abdul Rahim.
You're trying to jam me up now.
Married 9 times. And so, you know, and you know, he's like my father. My father did 14. And so, you know, I'm not
14 marriages
in my life. I'm not repeating in my life. But you know, they had, I know that there was a lot more simple, people were trying to repeat the process of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, make marriage as simple as possible. But just like, how did that actually go? Like, how did that go for you? Like, did you have tabligh your wife? Was she already in the dal? You know, did you court through the imam? Did y'all write letters back and forth? You know, what was the actual, like, can you share with us like kind of a story of it so that we can grasp it and create our own vision in our head of what it would look like to go through that marital process?
Right. So it's two things going on with that, okay? Number one, you've seen a sister that you think you're interested in. Number two, you're interested in getting married, all right? And as a result, you get a supportive person. So in other words, like I said, there's a brother, all right? Okay, he says, okay, I know a brother who's wali of a couple of sisters, and he's asked me about, so he's done investigation. He's a network for sisters looking for husbands or whatever, and aware you just came out of a joint or you baggage, whatever the case may be, and he presents that to the wali, okay, of those sisters. You don't know nobody. You don't know nothing, all right? Then if there's a green light, then he comes back to you and gives you the opportunity and then the opportunity to see each other. Just to look and see, whatever. That's the person, whatever. And you say, okay. The other end is that you've seen the sister, you like her, you go chasing down who a wali is, okay? So, you know, you find a wali, oh, that's a wali, you know what I mean? You find out that she married. She married already, okay? You know, and all that. So it's a number of different ways that brothers get caught up, you know, in terms of, especially new brothers coming into the community, you know what I mean, in terms of looking for a wife.
But how was the process of chasing down somebody's wali? Because you see a sister and, you know, how were you finding out, like, who is her wali? Who do I ask about? I mean, you're not approaching her directly. So what was that like? Like, what do you have to do?
Again, like I said, you know, I had a sponsor.
Yes, sir.
You know, a male sponsor. So in other words, that's his business, right? So he knows the brothers, he know their kid, the daughters, or whoever they're guardian of, or whatever. He knows the imams, you know, what's there, whatever. And then, like I said, then he gets back to me, right? And tells me the possibilities of a wife. The other scenario of just not lowering your gaze and seeing sisters that you think you might want to marry, and believe me, if you're not married, you know what I mean? Either you fasting all the time or you're controlling their gaze. Okay, and if in that case, right, then you're probably working at a disadvantage in that, because as you said, how are you going to know, who her wali is? How you going to go about that? Like I said, you don't even know anything about the system. You're just visually going on the sister that you see. And all that comes from Jahiliyah. That comes from our transition. See, our transition into Islam from Western, training, theory, thought, and see the nafs ties into whatever it can tie into to break you down. And normally that's a very weak area, so brothers compromise a lot with that. And they find a way to find out who the sister is or this or whatever. But again, like I said, ideally for me is to have a sponsor, a male sponsor for the brother.
Okay. That concept is very interesting. How was the maher piece? Like, was it easy to get married? Was it a requirement to actually provide fully for the sisters at that time? How was that?
Yeah, it was. I mean, the fundamental principles of being able to take care and maintain the sister is there, but it's always based on individual circumstances, right? And the conditions involved between the two parties. What she's actually looking for, what he's actually looking for, what he's capable of, you know what I mean? Like that or whatever, basically after and during the period of evaluating compatibility.
Okay.
So Sheikh, are you currently married? I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did
Are you
sisters
currently
have sponsors as well?
Say what?
Did the sisters have sponsors as well? You
The
said
sister has a wali.
Oh, well, yeah.
Yeah, she has a wali.
That's
See,
right.
so the brother that sponsors, the brother, he talks with the wali in terms of what the sister really needs, understanding who he's sponsoring. Like I say, he been to prison, he had a case, he got 2 divorces. You see what I'm saying? He already know the dude, right? So
Right.
when he goes to the wali, he got to come straight. You see,
Right.
so everything is healthy.
Healthy, right. Okay. You mentioned something about so when back to the Darl and the splitting, right? You said it was the north, the community in the north and the community in the west. You said that the north was more geared towards establishing businesses versus the west. Can you tell us a little bit more about the focus that West Philly took? And also a little bit about the Sufi quarters that I want you to touch on that a little bit.
Oh, okay. Yeah, again, like I said, I had mentioned a series of achievements that the Dar over a period of time had made, and some of them were involved in business, and even more than that. I mean, they flew airplanes. I mean, that was the degree of where and what the Dar had been involved in. And, it was more like, in West Philly, they were sticking more with the national direction tied into that. You got me? See, in North Philly, they more broke away from the original idea, national idea, okay? Not that they were against it, but just they had this energy. And I knew those, I was raised with those brothers, to make money, okay? And the Dar, the West Philly, and they wouldn't venture out on nothing like that or whatever without approval, from the national. All right, whatever. So it took them to step aside to do that. Small group, brothers or whatever. I came home, I know them very well. Like I said, grew up with them. They was hustlers when I was a young guy. So they always like money. And so eventually, as you dealing, in the brotherhood, certain things come up and certain things, create differences, and you just got to be aware of that and repair that stuff. So I lost you again.
Tell us a little bit about the Sufi quarters.
All right, Sufi quarters what was called a single brothers rooms. It was a 3-story building, that you find the masjid, the imam, the community would find these 3-story houses and make rooms for brothers coming home from prison, for brothers who, when they took their shahada, had problems in the home, just a welcome type of environment for the brothers. Also brothers that had tasks within the masjid in terms of security on the desk, security patrols in the community, whether feeding the hungry, feeding the homeless, that kind of thing. Those service-orientated things that the community functioned with, those single brothers that had the time, right, and that had, didn't have the support at home or maybe working towards building financial means could stay.
How many Sufi quarters did they have in Philly at that time?
It depends. You had a couple. 33rd Street it's near Fairmount Park. You had a couple of buildings over there. You had some down South Philly. You had some Germantown. So different parts. It depends on the community and how the community wanted to address that issue.
So would you say that it was helpful in terms of helping the brothers who are unemployed or not married get on their feet? And
Perfect. Yes, idea.
Okay.
Excellent concept. Lost and gone. Lost and gone. Because
I
now
love
it's
that
more
idea.
individual.
I love that idea because I'm from, Brooklyn, and I'm going to say it, there are a few masajid that I feel like turn into men's shelters, right? The men are sleeping in the masjid. They might have a position at the masjid, they might help a little bit, but they're staying there. And I'm like, the Sufi quarters seems like it gives them an opportunity to kind of get on their feet, but not sleep in the masjid. So I think that they kind of need to bring that kind of concept back. I think that would be very helpful. But why did they name it the Sufi quarters? It sounds like it has some, I don't know.
I think it's more like, that's a nickname that was going around at the time. I guess it meant, that I had nothing to do with Sufism, all right,
Gotcha.
or whatever, but, but just, maybe give them a chance to reflect, all right, or whatever.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? Something like that. But it was sort of like a
be doing in there. Vicar, don't be doing no foolishness. I get that.
Yeah, oh yeah. Because Tabligh Jamaat would be in there. You know that, right? Tabligh Jamaat be up in there.
Right.
But it's unfortunate now today, there's just no, everybody's out for themselves and there's no community at all. There's no
Right.
There's a lot we gotta work on.
Absolutely. Did they have any quarters for the sisters? Say maybe sisters who went through domestic violence, who was homeless, who didn't have support. Were there any type of homes for them back then?
Yes, there were. There were. They had situations for that. And very sensitive to that too. All of the imams during that period of time or whatever.
Okay.
Yes, they had additional places, maybe with sisters that had homes and weren't married and could, kind of like get an extra room or something like that or whatever. But yeah, there was a lot of support for sisters as well.
Alhamdulillah. That's what's up.
So Sheikh, I hear you saying about, we've heard stories of the doll, and I know there's people who are going to listen to this interview who don't know about the doll. And, because I consider myself a child of the doll completely. So like, I'm a Madrasat al-Shahideen student, that thing. I still remember the songs. Oh, Madrasat al-Shahideen, oh, what a wonderful name. The question that I have is about the roles. So you have sponsors, you have people playing different roles, people doing different things. What were these like defined roles? And on other movements, like in the nation and later in Wahdi Muhammad, that women and men had defined roles. They played roles to support each other. How was your life in the Dal in Philly with some of the defined roles for men versus defined roles for women inside of the community?
Okay, that's a good question. Just to be clear, once again, that I was in the penitentiary during the height of the DAR. I was not actually directly involved, in the DAR. I know a lot about it because we supported it from the prison, and we had chaplains come in from the DAR to support us in the prison. And when I came out, like I said, I came to this recent split of North versus West in the DAR. So, and I also went to, Osage Avenue, Asher Hood, Masjid Asher Hood, from time to time to pray and get to know the brothers. So I don't want to comment on it as if, my direct experience was there. Most of my experience was indirect.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, how going a little bit further, I mean, I know there was things like, some brothers were struggling with coming out of lives of substance abuse. And, when life goes through these ups and downs and pivots and stuff, it sometimes can carry you back. And I had one brother actually tell me, because my father had the masjid downtown, he kept the DAR methodology in downtown Atlanta at Masjid al-Jamia. If anyone knows Atlanta, they know that space. But brother was telling me that, how crack embeds itself in your spinal cord. And sometimes you can bend down and a shot of it will hit you 5 years, 10 years later and create a craving.
Wow.
How did the DAO deal with slippage, with brothers who were slipping back into that space? How did they deal with that?
Yeah, the brothers that I came in contact with that were from the DAR, and also those who had been in the DAR, was that there was a no tolerance kind of policy. In other words, you know what I mean? It would not be accepted. And if there was a concern, then there would be treatment offered. All right. There will be counseling offered. You know what I mean? And anything to kind of put the brother back on track or sister back on track. So yes, in fact, the community was aware of, the need to support, all levels of problems, from marital problems to substance abuse problems to all different levels of problems. So there was a commitment to do that. The imam generally would assign, a specific department, committee, or area to handle that. And they would tackle on a lot of those cases in those areas.
So I got 2 questions to ask before we move on to part 6. Sister Mukhtara, with Sister Mukhtar's total permission. They're in line with it, and it's about celebration, the Ramadan and Eid fests, but I want to ask that in 2 parts. And the reason why I want to ask in 2 parts is because I want to ask you, how was it to attend, to be part of Ramadan and Eid pre the big split, and then after the big split? I was born in 78. So, as a kid, we would go to the combined combined Eids. We would travel to Philly, travel to New York, travel to blah, blah, go to those Eids and stuff as a kid in caravans, but, most of my experiences were post, well, I won't say post, they were pre-Sheikh Jelani, and then kind of like post-Sheikh Jelani, it kind of like just completely fell apart. There was not a lot. So, I guess what I want to ask first is just about Ramadan and Eid, that we suffer from not having great Ramadans and Eids anymore, I think. But how was that during your time? Like in your time, at the best parts, what was the experience of experiencing Ramadan with the brothers and experiencing Eid with the brothers and with the sisters?
Ramadan, again, as it continues on to be, alhamdulillah, a very exciting, right, and very, fulfilling period in the lives of the Muslims, throughout the cities, and specifically, in our area, Muslims are like African Americans that come from a society and a way of life where they party. I mean, they enjoy they enjoy celebrating. They enjoy, enjoying themselves. And when they come into Islam and they see that there's only, 2 Eids. So Ramadan, was a time by which that you just went to the max. You just really prepared yourself according to Islam, you know what I mean? And as best, that you could get the things for your children or whatever. During our time, they were huge. There was no fitna in terms of Ramadan. The idea was all of the masjids, all of the imams came together. And during a period of time, in transition from that, where the Majlis al-Shura was forming itself, right? This is after, when Imam Jamil took over your community after the split, right? The Eids and celebrations always were, magnificent. I mean, you would come together, you would see everybody. I mean, so Ramadan in itself was a sort of well-deserved celebration of a month of the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you had believers who might have been sitting on the side of the fence, may have had some problems, whatever. They got a brand new garment on, right? Probably fasted for the most part, most of the month, right there in the ranks. Ramadan has always served, especially in the past, as a dynamic, level of raising, the integrity and the direction of the Muslims. Now, since then, so Ramadan, of course, in its practice, full participation, Eid, full celebration. Since then, this has always been a threat to those forces that look at Muslims from the outside. So as each year goes on, the challenges increase. So as an example, in Philadelphia, 1967, you had in Philadelphia, Temple University, Dr. Ismail Faruqi, right? Dynamic brother. His books were phenomenal. Palestinian brother came over, everybody would go and sit with him. Dynamic during that time, okay? He was assassinated, right? In 1986, okay? Same time era during that time, all right? Prior to that came the split, right? And with the split came separate Eids, separate Ramadans, we're going to hear whatever. So it began to break down the unity, break down, the value that it had both in Eid and during Ramadan, even in terms of, coming together. So the various divisions, which, and from my experience, have been external, okay? This is somebody that's watching us, that know us and our leadership better than we do, and make sure that we never rise. And Ramadan, again, and Eid's a time when people talk, we love each other. The purpose of it is like Hajj, where we communicate, and it's always been like that. But after the split, like I said, same thing. After the surge in 90s, right, of this thing that came from overseas, right, of we the best Muslims kind of thing. I don't know what they call it. Can't remember what they call it. But when that came, split the Muslims in half again, whole nother Eid now, whole nother Ramadan, whole nother part of the city. I went in the park, this park, we're all in Philly, Fairmount Park. All Muslims came every year for Ramadan. All Muslims came, for Eid, all Muslims, basically coordinated activities, events for children, whatever, toys, Ramadan, Eid in that park. After those splits, I went in that park, The Eid that's normally the Eid was probably half that size. You go around in the park to another park in the same park. Whole nother group of people, all dressed in black, faces covered, white robes, Muslims, split, completely split. The we on the hawk, you know what I mean? And now you not on the hawk. Where'd that come from? External.
So tell us about the splits, though, because it's multiple splits that I hear you talking about, right? So like, I guess, from a Philly perspective, I probably need to ask at least about two, right? So like, what was can you describe like your life, your situation? How was it when Sheikh Jelani came in, Imam Yahya Abdul Karim, kind of conceded the dial to Sheikh Jelani. And I know he made a trip down to Philly. How was that for you? Like, how did that impact you with the dissolution of the Darl? Because I know that's what the brothers came down. They basically said, you can't use the Darl name anymore. You guys got to do something else. Like, how was that for you? How was that experience of the dissolution of the Darl?
Well, it was very impactful from the sense of where it was actually going, okay? The quality of the brothers that was getting down and going to the hotel to hear the Sheikh were top-notch brothers. These brothers, I stood beside, okay? I mean, in battle, all right? In prayer and everything. Top-notch brothers. All right? They was going down, man. They was listening to the Sheikh, or whatever. I was confused in a way. I really didn't know, you know what I mean? But at that time, you know what I mean? Again, like I said, I was still mainly dealing with Ali and them in North Philly, right? With the trucks and the clothes and whatever, and not so much engaged as what was happening at Osage Avenue, right? And so, as it was happening, I was confused and, anticipating what it really meant, because I really didn't know, you know what I mean? Because it knocked me out because of the people that was going down. And then rumors started. See, and when you hear rumors and when you hear this, and you see instigation and you see things like that, that's a complete sign of some kind of infiltration or something's going on somewhere. Allah knows best. I don't know. First reaction, I wasn't sure. I don't know. Second reaction, I'm out of here. That's it. And anyway, like I said, I was with Ali and them. So I wasn't really, I loved them brothers. We was all, like I said, we got down together, all them brothers down to Osage. You know what I mean? But like I said, I was Ali Ahmed and then up in Germantown, which was all part of the Dar. But we were selling clothes, business, this, that, open up the masjid, you know what I mean? Trying to start businesses, working with the youth. I was dealing with the Scout program in DC movement. So I was doing all kinds of things. So when it happened, that was my position in it, with it. So I wasn't within it. You see what I'm saying? I was outside it, but that was my reaction.
So can you give me like the story? Because see what, I'll tell you, I've got three conflicting concepts, and I'd love to hear your particular, like I've heard, I was in Sudan with Imam Dawood from Cleveland. And, we talked about this concept that it might have been an FBI coercion to Imam Yahya. Then we talked about the concepts of how Sheikh Jelani, started out in Afghanistan, but, also very interesting, I was in the land down in South Carolina, where my wife is from, and my mother-in-law and father-in-law are at. And, their neighbor in the line with Rajiun, Khalifa Ali Rashid, he was, just his conversation with Imam Yahya, because like I understand from Sheikh Abdul Hadi that the classes that were being given in the Darul were actually classes on the Ahl Suf. And they were classes that were leading to the tariqah. Like it was like 4 stages to get to the tariqah. And those classes they had to take, they were coming from this Sufi sheikh that came from Pakistan. I was in upstate New York. And then I also understand that those classes, what Sheikh Jelani had did is gave like a straight shot. And so Imam Yahya had said, look, I ran out of things to teach the brothers. I ran into a hit where I couldn't go further, and I had to bring in someone who had more knowledge than me. So there's all these different perspectives, and I've heard from all the different angles. I've made it a part of my life to find out. And, you know, but what I've always wondered is, I know how information comes down. Sometimes the core of an information comes down, but then you have this core tenement where Imam Yahya said, never bow to a foreign power. So the fact that he didn't turn around and gave up the dial to a foreign power had to have created massive questions around the origins and why it happened and everything else. What was the actual story? Like when you heard it, like who told you, how did it go down? What was your steps? You know, can you kind of visualize that period of time for us so we can see it in our own heads?
What I can do, Farouk, is tell you what I understand, you know, about the pattern, right, of the strengthening and the unity of the Muslim community and its pattern of dismantlement, okay? External interference, injecting right into it misunderstandings of the deen, internal disorders, which arise from personality conflicts, worldly desires, all mixed up into that. You know, the brotherhood and misuse of knowledge, okay? So, my brother in Islam, you know, we could sit down and we could talk and get into it. But just for this particular podcast, I will tell you, right, that the Islamic movement in this country by African Americans, starting with the Dar al-Islam movement, Islamic Party, Jamaat al-Muslimin, all of these parties, right, have been under the same target, the same evaluation, right, as Black Liberation Army, Black Panther Party, SNCC, all of the different Black organizations that seek to rise up, all right, the African-American people, you know, to a state, and in the case of Islam, to nearness to their Lord and Creator. And in that is that when it's targeted at sovereignty, meaning, right, a threat to existing sovereignty, all right? Like I said before, sovereignty is sovereignty, right? Separation of religion and state. Thomas Jefferson didn't do that for no reason, right? So it's that religion, right, is not even a real word, you know? It's really about deen, right? So the reality of it is that this pattern, right, that comes in and dismantles, right, progressive Islamic movement. In the case of the Dar, in my opinion, Allahu Adam, I'm just a soldier. I'm a soldier in the deen, and I beat till I die, right? Is that the study of the weaknesses of each component, as study of the weaknesses of the Black Panther Party, study of the weaknesses of SNCC, the role of Imam Jamil Al-Amin in coming into the dawn. Okay, all of these things are studied, all right, by institutes to reassure, okay, that the African American Muslims stay within the framework of the interest of those who have sovereign power here, right? So as a result, okay, the weakness that they saw or thought they saw in the tar, because again, the tar was literal. They were straightforward, Quran and Sunnah. Remember, Imam Jamil never got off track with that. Quran and Sunnah, make your salat, fundamental, right? The weakness was challenged from the outside with knowledge, right? And threaten the movement with not having Islamic knowledge. Okay, in reality, that it was only you talking about Islamic information. You're talking about information. You're not talking about knowledge. Knowledge comes from experience, right? And sacrifice, which the Dar had. So they didn't need that other stuff, that, whatever it is, but they were convinced, you see, in some way that the way that they would dismantle them is that way, just like the Panthers, just like the Liberation Army. Just like they locked all them up. They lock Jamil up, they lock you up, or they kill you whenever it gets to the point of threatening the system. And this is what the Dar knows. So that's my opinion, is that they knew the weakness within the framework and they injected it. And unfortunately, our brothers, our dear loving brothers, whatever.
So I think there's couple more parts here that have you covered. I think we're at an hour and a half now, so I'm gonna push forward.
But it's okay. I want to touch. I left for a minute, but I'm back. I want to touch a little bit about Ezzeldine Village in New Jersey. You talked a little bit about moving there at some time. Can you talk a little bit about your experience there at Ezzeldine Village? For those who don't know what Ezzeldine Village is, Professor Muhammad Ezzeldine was the founder of a prominent Black Sunni organization in the 1940s. And he started the AAUAA, and he perhaps was the most unappreciated Black Muslim leader of the 20th century. His life intersected with the founding of the Moorish Science Temple of America, the rise of the Nation of Islam, and an organization of Black Sunni leadership across the Northeast and Midwest. So let's talk a little bit about it. How was your experience there? SubhanAllah.
Adiyu Allahu He Universal Arabic Association Incorporated. That's the technical name that Professor Muhammad Ezzeldine founded, right, in August 1938 in Newark, New Jersey. That's where they started. Professor Ezzeldine, he taught Quran and Sunnah, and the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he assisted the believers in establishing the deen in the state of New Jersey. One of the things that Professor Ezzeldine was very encouraging about was that he believed in agricultural development. He believed that farming and independent community, being able to feed yourself, was really important. So what he did is he generally migrated and did those things. In 1985, 84, I think, me and my family, we were, again, all of the madness that was going on in the city, me and my family decided to make hijrah to buy a piece of land in New Jersey, right outside of Philly. I was still working in Philly. Still going to the masjid in Philly, so I needed to be able to get there. So we looked at South Jersey, and we found one of Professor Ezzeldine's communities, his village, right, in a place right outside of Winslow Township, right outside of a place called Chislehurst. So I wasn't able to buy the land within the village because you needed to buy 10 acres in order to, sustain it in there. So what we did, we got into the closest town, which was Chislehurst. And I was able to buy a couple of acres, in a house, had a well, septic tank, all that. And I raised my family there for 31 years. Yeah, 31 years I was there. And alhamdulillah, we came out, we joined the community, we were members, we used to read the mail on Saturdays, we started farming, growing vegetables, raising animals. We built an aquifer out back, for fish. So I brought a lot of the scouts out, hiking and camping. And that was the experience at Ezzeldine Village.
Wow. Amazing. Wow. I've heard so many great things about that community. So by the time you were there, did he pass away? Was he deceased?
Yeah, he was deceased.
Okay.
Yeah, he's deceased, I think in the 65. In 60s, he had deceased. There was a masjid that had formulated in the back of the village, right? Masjid Mujahideen, run by a brother named Musa and a brother Saeed. A nice community. And it was really nice. Brother Mukhtara, and everybody would come out, and grow their food and meet on Saturdays. And we'd have Ramadan. Imam Nafi Muhammad, Anwar and Anas Muhammad's father.
Yes, from Cuba.
From Cuba. Yeah, he came out. He married a sister from down there. And so he had a house down there. Yeah, so we were all together.
Wow, so you had 10 acres in a house. Like, what was your goal?
I didn't have 10 acres. I couldn't get 10, right?
Oh, you couldn't get 10.
True.
Okay. Oh, yeah, you did say that. That's right. Sorry. Okay. Alhamdulillah. Okay, so I want to move on to the Jawala Scouts. You were telling me yesterday a little bit about the history, the concept.
About that before you go on?
No problem.
Me a lot. The Ezzeldine Village, I've never heard that before in my life. That's a brand new one to me. The Ezzeldine
Really?
Village. Yeah, it's ironic that I've never heard of this in my life, but
it's a pioneer BAM community for sure. I learned last year.
Yeah.
I learned last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, Brother Muhammad, you don't know, but I run an organization called the Freedom Nation. And we work under that concept of not just Dar Islam, because we've expanded it to Dar Shahada, which was by the instruction of Imam Nadim, Imam Ibrahim, and Imam Jamil, to expand it to Dar Shahada and even beyond just Dar Islam. And so we take all the tenements and the structures and the orders that were inside the Dar and implement it in the structure. We're probably the most active movement right now of buying land and feeding yourself. We own hundreds of acres of land in the US, thousands of acres inside of Asia. I'm in Malaysia right now calling you. And, so it's a big thing for me to study those movements. And I've never heard of the Ezzeldine movement before, and Ezzeldine Village. How long did you stay in that area? Like, how long were you a part of that?
Well, I was in the area for 31 years. So in that house. So about 15 or 20 years we were there. However, it was they began to pass away. They were all older than us, they were all older than us, and they were enlightened in the fact that we were a younger generation coming in, right? Their children had broke out. We ain't living out here. You know what I mean? We going back in the city, whatever. So we were an inspiration in coming there.
Right.
So alhamdulillah, it was good. And then we found, there was some issues, how we are, some interpersonal stuff that we had to kind of work through and things like that. However, ultimately, the land was left titled to their relatives who weren't Muslim. So eventually,
that's how that happened.
Eventually, yes. And no one really, never knew. And it was a couple that were left, right, that they decided to sell to someone else. Right?
Wow.
And at that same time, we were, like I said, right, maybe a half a mile down the road in Chislehurst. So that
Wow.
was what had happened, with that. So it's like, alhamdulillah, it was great. We had a really, really good experience with that. But, we found out, as they passed away, we go to look for the deed, for the title, continue the land, the aquifer, goes down, the land. We had 7 acres of land just for development, entitled his son, who was gay. You know what I mean? And it was just like, you see what I'm saying? So all those things, we have to make sure when we get involved that, they're clear. So that's what
they
happened.
also had land upstate New York. Were you able to go visit the land upstate New York too?
No, we didn't go up there. They came down, we would have something, or whatever. But no, I never was able to visit that. They had representatives from there, that would come down to our meetings and stuff like that. But I never went and visited that. No.
Okay. Wow.
That's
I
deep.
always
How
wanted to know
was the
what happened.
management structure? How did that actually run? Like, if the brother had passed away in 67 and it was still getting on, was it like the imam masjid structure, or was it like a council? Was there a mayor? Like, what was the structure of that? And as far as, because I see it fell apart because of lack of interest in land ownership disputes. But outside of that, how was the day-to-day management being handled?
Well, in a large sense, it was a little lopsided in regard to nationalism. Okay, and so, like I said before, the Dean of Law Arabic Association, they, their dean was, alhamdulillah, but it was more leaning more towards national, and that affected the count. They had like a committee, a council that ran, the areas. We were actually dealing with representatives, right, of that council that was in New York that actually ran it. So, again, like I said, they had tied it in with their family. So after a period of time, you know what I mean, they lost that. But I would still remain in Chislehurst and came down to still use the land, for hunting and activities with the scouts and things like that.
Sure. So Sister Hadeiyah wants to know if those, I think she's muted, but she wants to know if there's any communities like that that still exist.
Well, Atlanta right now, with the Jawala Rangers, they're in the process of developing that idea. I'm not sure they have the land or don't have the land, but that's one situation that I know of. In Mississippi, they were doing that, with the Wharf-Theme Muhammad community down in Mississippi. But other than that, no, that I know.
But if you tell me who it is in Atlanta, they can come and use my land, and I'll be more than happy to sponsor it.
Alhamdulillah.
In the Freedom Village. That's not even a question. So that's another note, but I'll be more than happy to do that. It's just
Allahu Akbar. That's good. That's Sharif in there.
Oh, you want Sharif from We Buy Black?
Sharif from the Dar.
Oh, okay. No, okay.
The last name. Oh, head.
Okay. Oh, okay. I'll hit them up because they can come down. We in Hancock. We're just an hour away, but they can use our land any day of the week. That's what we're here for. Brother, I want to say, Brother Muhammad, that I have to say it because I have to get it out. My father, I sat there and watched him pass away. And, while he was dying, he told me a couple of things. One of them, he said that, he wanted to die on the minbar, reminding people to build Dar Islam.
Allahu Akbar.
And by Allah, he died on the minbar, reminding people to build Dar Islam.
Allahu Akbar.
When I took him to the hospital for the last time, and he found out that he was dying, he had stomach cancer and he had cirrhosis of the liver, and the doctor told him they were competing against each other to kill him. And he looked at me and I told him, I said, well, he said, what you think, Farouk? I said, well, if what you taught us was right, then you okay and I'm okay. You know,
Alhamdulillah.
we're gonna be all right. So when he was passing on that day, his last dream was he woke up and said, I was riding a white chariot carrying Imam Jamil out of jail. That was
Allahu
his
Akbar.
last dream. And when he passed, I leaned in his ear on his last breath and told him I wouldn't die before I saw the extension of the dial exist in this world the way it was supposed to. So, you know, this is the heart that our family has put towards this movement. And we're very active, extremely active, and extremely organized in the effort. So, you know, you always have a home with us. I have some question before. I know the sister Mukhtara wants to get in the Jawala Scouts as well. So, but I wanted to just say that because I'm always moved by stories of the Dal. I'm moved by your generation. I'm moved by your commitment and your sacrifice. I think it's stories of amazingness that should stand over all the other crap that we're forced to learn. You know, and Sister Mukhtara for putting together these formats is amazing for doing so, you know, but I yield to her because I know she had questions about the Jawala Scouts, but you're muted, Sister Mukhtara. I was just taking advantage of you being muted.
Okay. I'm
Yeah.
so sorry. Mashallah.
What
It's an
happened to
honor for me
Sister
to be able-
Hadeiyah?
Sister Hadeiyah is hiding. She's
Sister
supposed to have.
Hadeiyah is here.
You ain't saying nothing.
I'm here, Brother Muhammad.
All right, okay.
I'm here in the
okay.
background helping out, and if
Mashallah.
anything is needed.
Mashallah.
So, Brother Muhammad, I want you to get into the Jawala Scouts. You were telling me before about like how the concept came to be and just the history of Jawala Scouts. So can you get into it a little bit about the Jawala
The history
Scouts?
of the Jawala Scouts, the concept and term itself,
Yeah.
started in Egypt under Sheikh Hassan al-Banna in about 1932. The concept was titled Rovers. Jawala Scouts basically were considered as rovers, adventurers, youth, you know, involved in the revival of Islam, physical fitness, activities through sports. And it actually came through the organization with Hassan al-Banna through what was at the time called Society of Muslim Brothers, which was Al-Ikhwan al-Muslimin. Because the focus was on athletic activity and physical training, it was remodeled, right, from a former form of what was called the Egyptian National Scout Movement. That's basically where the concept, you know, of Jawala came from. You know, it played a crucial role, right, in the revival of Islam. That was his concept. Youth and revival of Islam, engaging the youth, right, in the revival of Islam was a sunnah. And the time frame was between a time in Egypt where there was a lot of moral, right, and political decay. Political decay on the part, you know, Sadat, the history of those nation states, and the infiltration of Christian missionaries into the Egyptian society, which affected heavily the masjids, effectively Islam, the Muslims, how they backed off. So the Jawala, along with, you know, Al-Ikhwan al-Muslimin, who was dedicated to go against that, did just that. Jawala's ages at that point in Egypt was about age 13 to 18. These young guys, you know, were brought in, educated, trained, and revived the masjid, congregational salat. So Islam was revived, right? In Egypt at that time based on that. And of course, as we all know, the history of Al-Ikhwan al-Muslimin, the Society of Muslim Brothers, that at a certain stage when the Egyptian society, was strengthening and Sadat got taken out of the picture, right? Then we know Hassan al-Banna was assassinated, okay? So at that time, the Brotherhood continued, the Rovers continued to strengthen the movement, and eventually the Brotherhood became more integrated into the new phase of Egyptian society. So that's the initial history and acknowledgement and historical data in regard to the concept and the term Jawala Scouts, okay, Jawala, rovers, right? The rebirth of the Egyptian village. So that's basically, the history of it and where it came from. In the 70s, all right, as the Dar came in the door with a dynamic concept called Rod. From the soar, thunder, Rod, right? Where these were men, right, that focus on physical development and security. 200 brothers after Fajr, training, getting themselves together, hitting the streets, La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah, all throughout the streets of New York. And you talk to your fathers and your parents, they can, definitely probably, it'll tell you about that, right? And, as they did that, you see what I'm saying? That was a thrust, and they were confronted and attacked by the police in regard to Rod, okay? Okay, so Rod was definitely challenged, okay? Again, Rod basically saying, 19, 18, 20, whatever, right? So then in 71, 72 came the institution of Jawala Scouts. So again, Allahu Alam, how history repeats itself, how the term was identified, the Dar Islam movement brought up and incorporated what was called the Jawala Scouts, addressing at this point a developmental age group. So that is basically the history of it and how it came through Dar, and how we got it was that Imam Asim Abdul Rashid, again, rahimahullah, right, was the commander. He was appointed the commander of the Jawala Scouts, I think by Yahya. And he's in Philly, and I was in Philly. And during the time, I was already doing Scouts. So he had told the brothers, hey, that brother, over there, Muhammad Abdul Warf and them brothers over there, they doing something, right? And he had the program. He had the Jawala Scout program there, and it was already existing. Brothers were uncommitting, to the program during that time. So maybe about 82 or whatever, he called us over. We came over, me and a brother named Rashad Bey, and he asked us to look at this program. We looked at it, we loved it. We fell in love with it, complete love. So we immediately started it and been doing it ever since. Concept, joining fun with learning and protection from the dunya. Sheikh Shuaib wrote in the Jawala Scout manual that we needed to develop something to protect our children from the dunya. We were finding that our children, even though we're doing what we're doing, they're going to public schools, they're going to different schools, non-Islamic schools, un-Islamic environment in the neighborhoods, and they're being influenced. So we need something to protect them from the dunya. And so the brothers, and then came the sisters. Banatu Muslimin. Jawala Scouts, Banatu Muslimin. 1985, 1995. Concept, tarbiyah and tazkiyah, training and purification of all young Muslims to sustain the needs and the goals of the next generation of Muslims. Simple, fundamental, clear, not complicated. Bite-sized pieces, right, of information about your prophet, about your deen. Quran, right? A surah of Quran every week, okay? Memorize with your parents. Ramadan, Eids, okay? Bite-sized information, you know, as we would bring them into it. So I think basically that's a general outline of basically what we did in scouting. 3 aims that we had in scouting in this concept that we developed over a period of time. Started at Masjid Mujahideen under Imam Asim. I got permission from Imam Asim Abdul Rashid Rahimullah to take Jawala Scouts outside of the Jamaat into various masjids throughout the city. I got a lot of slack from the brothers. Yeah, you know, this, that, whatever. Imam Asim, we was on the same page. Again, like I said, we went way back in the day too. We used to gang war together. All right. He was from Morocco's, I was from Tawagati. So we knew each other like that. So he said, Muhammad, go ahead. So we took him to various masjid, Masjid Allah, Germantown Masjid, you know, UMM, United Muslim Masjid. We started getting leaders to do it with 3 aims. The 3 aims was character development, because that's what scouting focuses on. And that's why scouting is focused. It develops character. You have an oath. You have 16 duties. You have the 7 articles of faith. You have these things that are memorized and repeated so they understand commitment and tying them in loyalty to the Jamaat. Because right now, that's what you see, that brothers get away from the Jamaat. Post-adolescence or whatever, they grow up, whatever, they go to school, go to college, you know, they're off into an individual life. But again, those 3 aims, character development, of course, Islamic training, Tarbiyyah, and Tazkiyah. Again, like I said, in various forms. We're working on a long-term program now of Ibadah worship skills. 7-year, age 7 to 14, worship skills. Just focus, be kind, be nice, treat your parents right. These kind of things, repetitive, forming good habits, all right? The idea, you know, keep good habits. And like I said before, we're not like school, you know, we don't take off for the summer, right? We don't take breaks, none of that, every single week.
Wow.
I got to see those boys every single week. And Allah has blessed us to be able to do that. And the 3rd aim is physical fitness, martial arts, self-defense, life defense, how to fight. Everybody got to know how to fight, okay? Martial arts is critical. It outdoes any sports that you can imagine, baseball, football, basketball. Martial arts is where you get the quality of real discipline, right? And learn that skill. So, alhamdulillah. Principles, taqwa, discipline, responsibility, courage. So all these principles are integrated into the classroom work through intensive class study and field trips. So that's the combination. Every 4th week, we in the street. All right.
Hey,
I love this program.
I love it.
Is there a particular style of martial arts that the boys are taught?
Yeah, right now, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Ooh.
I love this.
That is
amazing. I love this.
Brother Muhammad, I got a question. You know, my kids, I'm raising my kids now in Kazakhstan. And Kazakhstan is known for being like the fighting force of the Russian military. Right? You know, all the kids, like my boys, if they don't learn jujitsu and boxing, you know, some little Kazakh dude will try them. You know, like everybody's good, everybody's cool, but every kid takes jujitsu. Every kid takes boxing. You know, like, so, you know, my girls take jujitsu. My girls take boxing.
There you go.
You know? I had them come up and beat on their cousins when they came back to the U.S. You know, the one of the things, well, one of the things that jammed me, like I was young, I was in Jawala Scouts, you know, I remember some of the more militant portions of it. I remember breaking down a 9mm in the dark, you know, and putting it back together. I remember the martial arts. My brother was a dead shot, you know, before he went off to school via Hafiz. You know, I remember the marching. I remember all of it. I remember standing on the block, standing down the dope boys in Atlanta and Imam Jamil's community. You know, I remember cleaning up the communities, everything. I remember all of that. And
you were asked that, huh?
My,
You're an asset. You Jawala Scout too? What you doing?
We working, Ak.
All right, okay.
I have to call you offline. We have a beautiful conversation, very beautiful conversation. The thing that got me though, and I have to ask this question, and especially what you have in the military background, you know, as kids, we were taught that, of course, serving in the military was against, especially in the Dawah. Now, Brothers of the War of Deen community were taught a different way, right? Imam Talib Sharif and his military background is extensive. And they were able to bind in their minds and their hearts that somehow being Muslim and being in the military wasn't against each other. Right. For us, we were taught that it was against each other, that going to another man's military and fighting for their cause was completely contrary to our belief structure. Right. And being in the Jawala Scouts, but I remember when I joined, I tried to join the lightest one I could. I joined the Coast Guard. I really wanted to join the Marine Corps. But the one brother who we're interviewing next, Brother Abdul Rashid, we're interviewing him next. I'm not part of that one, but Sister Mukhtara is interviewing him. You know, we were there when I came out of boot and he was sitting there, we were camping. And he said, Farouk, why did you join the military? I said, because y'all put us in Jawala Scouts. Y'all took us through all that training, and then you didn't give us nothing when we turned 18. I said, I had to put that somewhere, or else I was going to start flipping niggas on the block. So I said, that aggression, at the level of, I graduated high school when I was 13. Wow. My level of intelligence and my aggression together were tied at one. I had to beat ass and talk the block at the same time. And I had my spirit was out of the sight. I didn't think anything could challenge Islam. Nothing. I still don't. Right. So like coming with all that fire, and I was, 16 years old, 17 years old. I'm 185 pounds, 6 feet tall. That had to go somewhere. Mm-hmm. From your military background, and even with reinstating Jawala Scouts, this is a little less history and a little more about your own personal ideal system. How are you reconciling what we can do for the kids when they grow up with that package and they find a lack of institution available for them to put that package into?
Yeah, it's all about parents. It's all about parents. And the preparation, the law tells us about that, and it's mentioned the impact of parents, and so the institution, that you're talking about is being impacted, right now, again, by the softening, trying to use the word terminology, I think it's better the Islamic, without making it general, the general Islamic approach to Islam. Mm-hmm. Brothers don't feel as though they need an institution for that. Matter of fact, they don't have the time, okay? You know what it's like to get just brothers to volunteer to help with Jawala Scouts, other youth programs, whatever. It's very complicated. And in some cases, it's real because fathers got to work, they got to do this. Mothers are work, single parents are working, or whatever. But because of those things, there is no will to establish the further institution. Like you said, at 18, right? What you did, what my son did. You remind me of my son. Same thing. I would die before I let any of my sons, 4 of them, go into the military, because I was there, right? So I knew, because I didn't want them to get, die, killed, whatever, because all the wars going on, whatever. But they had topped out in terms of skill. My boy was bad, right? So one of them, right now, one of them's an airline pilot. He works for Frontier Airlines, right? And he wanted to fly, so he's flying, right? Another one's in Hawaii, somewhere. And another one of my sons, I went into the van, had a van one day, and looked on the seat of the van, and he had an army book on there. right? So I went in and picked the Army book up. So I said, let me find Salim, right? I said, wait, let me find out where he at. He was gone, military, just like you. That he could say he had to use it. And my son, as an airline pilot, he was frustrated and angry at me because I wouldn't let him go into the military to learn. And you know what he did? He raised his own money and went to airline pilot school in Atlanta, Georgia, to get his pilot license and to fly for himself. So I definitely can relate to what you're saying about where do they go? Where do you go from here? You know, once you develop those skills that you have. So again, it's all up to us. It's up to the community, it's up to the men and you. You know, like I said, you know, we can build this stuff. You know, we can build what we need. You got the land, you got things, you can build these things to continue the training and development, you know, of the next generation and keep them close to the deen.
Alhamdulillah.
Some of the scouting skills that we do is hiking. We do hiking. We do phases of it, 5 miles, 10 miles, 15 miles. Hiking, camping is a skill. 4-season camping we do. As a matter of fact, we got a winter camping trip coming up in the Poconos in the snow. But the guys do well. We got, again, advanced life defenses, which is another form of that. The Muhajirin, Mujahideen, and Sabikun on the 3 age levels. Muhajirin is 7 to 9. Mujahideen is 10 to 12. Sabikun is 13 to 17. And each has a different level. Muhajirin right now is wrestling and boxing. Mujahideen, boxing, martial arts. Sabikun, strictly martial arts. Archery, we're shooting the bows to eventually try to follow up into some hunting skills. And right now, we have beginners, second class, and then we have an archery team. Swimming, we have beginners, orange band and green band. Orange band is average swimmers, green band is survival swimming, able to rescue somebody. Fishing, we got beginners, second class and advanced, same thing in terms of fishing. Emergency preparedness and fire safety is a course mandatory for all scouts to take over the age of 12. And safety is also a mandatory course, you know, in terms of what the scouts do. Other scouting skills, cycling, repair, building shelters for survival situations, how to build a shelter out of a tarp, piece of wood, backpacking, second aid. We call first aid, second aid. We say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the first aid, survival medicine, broken bones, bleeding, archery, again, like I said, hunting, safety, merit achievements, team building resources. We use team building resources to enhance brotherhood. We find that when you come, these brothers that come in from the city, in the street, they have this tendency not to get along well. They don't like each other. It's really amazing when you see it, like 9 and 8 and 10 years old. You know, hit somebody and run away, get mad, you know, all those kinds of, you know, immature things, which comes from normally the household or whatever the case may be. So we're doing a lot of team building exercises and using resources to do that. We also do a guide to city services, which is called urban orientation, that's teaching the boys how to survive in the city. So it's not just about the outdoors, but it's also being able to survive in the city. So those are some of the things we do.
Alhamdulillah. This program sounds amazing. I wish I could go into it myself.
Alhamdulillah.
MashaAllah. I have a question. Okay. Do you teach them also about like healthy relationships? Like preparing for like
it's a skill workshop category called family responsibilities, right?
Okay.
And so we do that and cover that normally at the Sabikun level, you know, after age 13, age 14, 15, we teach that workshop.
Okay. So I just wanted to say, I think it was 2021, I had went to Philadelphia, mashallah, and they had like a Jawala Scouts banquet. And I was just sitting there and I was just so impressed
You was
Like,
there.
mashallah, I was so
No, you
impressed.
wasn't.
I was so impressed. I was sitting there in awe. I was saying, people can say what they want to say about Philly, but when it came to that, I said, they got this thing down pat. I
You
love
talking about the alumni banquet?
I loved it. I loved it. And I
Alumni
said,
banquet?
yes,
The alumni, yeah. We just
alumni
took
banquet, yes.
25 of the scouts that had grown up and shown, because we did like an evaluation of the results of Jawala
Yes.
Scout training, and you saw it, right? It was
I
like
loved
doctors, lawyers, scientists, right?
Mashallah.
Jawala Scout, Black, Muslim,
Mashallah.
all coming from Jawala Scouts. Yeah,
It was
100
beautiful. It was
phenomenal.
beautiful. And my question about that is, why do you think that it's sticking in Philly? Like, why do you think it's continuing in Philly as opposed to other states? I'm not sure if it's like consistent as how Philly is doing it, but why do you think Philly in particular is very consistent, when it comes to their activities in the Jawala Scouts in particular? I was so impressed. I was about to start telling you.
It's like Jawala Scouts was originally a national program. You had Jawala Scouts in Cleveland, you had Jawala Scouts down south. Like he said, he was a Jawala Scout. You had Jawala Scouts all over the country. But the commitment died. It's all about male commitment. Fathers, all right, parent commitment. So in Philly, Imam Asim, Rahim Allah, again, so much, man. My leader, like he instilled in me, you know what I mean, that Muhammad, you know what I mean, we in this thing, right? I said, everybody keep quitting, right? I said, Muhammad, we in this thing. So what happened in Philly was we stuck with it. Alhamdulillah. And brothers, we pull out brothers when we could. A brother could do 1 week, a brother could do a month, whatever. And then we started thinking about a stipend. Like right now, there's a great move being made. We just brought in a younger brother named Rayed. Alhamdulillah, he was a great scout leader years ago. He's going to now manage, one of the troops. And the idea is to bring into play a stipend, for some of the brothers, to maybe encourage those brothers that may need a stipend, and have these guys to commit. Now, along with that is Pennsylvania, which is Chester, Pennsylvania. Chester, Pennsylvania is alive, okay, because of that same commitment, right? Brother Nasir now, men, right? And they retained a couple 26-year-old, 25-year-old brothers. So as they recycle, the kids come in, they keep a solid, steady troop. And then we have Brother Bilal in Germantown, Master of the Law. Master of the Law. Brother Bilal's in Master of the Law, and that's also in Philly. But other than that,
right,
couldn't, but there were at one point Jawala Scouts all over the country.
Right. Well, I commend Philadelphia for that. Y'all keeping it going. I was so impressed and I loved it. I was like, this is dope. SubhanAllah.
But Mama, we see it breaking down. I mean, it seemed like every generation, and that's what I'd like to ask your advice.
Good point. Good point.
Every generation is getting weaker. And that's just the truth of it. I mean, like, my father gave me the task. He said, I brought y'all to make sure y'all were not people of the street, of the dunya. You were born and raised in Islam. He said, that was my generation's task, to give order and structure to that. He said, now you have to build something with it. But even from my own generation, that responsibility to the community at large about building something seems to have been broken. Several people have desired to go out to the dunya, and satisfy themselves in that way. And this generation just seems like they are the most self-centered generation I've ever seen in my entire life. And one of the questions becomes, I've witnessed that a brother used to be able the imam used to get a set of brothers, whether it was the Sufi quarters or whether it was something else, even if it was living in the mosque or whatever, you used to get a set of brothers that you could get committed, you could put them to task, and then you could work them, and they would have a certain level of commitment. But even the older generation right now, like even the generations of 50 to 65, and then the generations lower, their level of commitment is horrific. I see Christian parents that can dedicate themselves to being coaches on soccer teams more than I see Muslim men that dedicate themselves to being Jawala Scout troop leaders. You know, and so my question is real serious in the sense of, you know, from your perspective, I'm gonna use the term, like I'm gonna toss it in there. As an old head, you know, although right now I think I'm sporting more gray than you, though, Sheikh.
It's a term of endearment.
But the question would be is this, you know, as a matter of fact, let me ask it in a more direct way. You know, we have several hundred families in the Freedom Nation. I built it literally because I was trying to extend the work of the Dharma, and not just the Dharma. The core work of all of these movements was to build our own. Everybody. Imam Muhammad, I mean, you know, his son gave me the whole Man of the Year thing, blah, because of it. You know, Imam Pliman Al-Amin come over and said, "We got you." I said, "No, you ain't got me. I'm still Dar baby." You know, but the point is that I've had a hard time. You know, I started these camps, these training camps. They were 6-week training camps. I've taken people out into the woods, teach them survival skills. I teach people how to make their own brick. I teach them how to build their own houses from that brick. I teach them how to cut their own lumber. I teach them how to build their own houses. I took several people and put them in the woods and built entire small little cities in the woods, and then said, build up the rest of the city on your own. And I have a humongous problem with commitment. I have a humongous problem with commitment, like seriously humongous. How do you think, from what you know, like, you know, from what you know as what you've seen, how do we put not the idea, but the spirit of commitment back into what we're dealing with today? How do we re-infuse that deep desire? Like you said, you're a soldier, you're gonna stump till you die. How the heck do we put that back into the people?
SubhanAllah.
You know, Farouk, we have to, no point started history. We have to look at, well, okay, when did we have that? Did we ever have that? When did we have that? And how did we have that? We just talked for a long period of time about a movement, right, that had that. Not only that movement, but adjacent movements during that time period that had that, right? So we have to look, right, at what is affecting that, okay? All right? So we know that, all right, the order from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to establish Islam, okay, has been diluted, okay? You know, what do you hear, young people? You anybody talking about, yeah, we got to establish Islamic State, whatever. Matter of fact, you say it too loud, and definitely an immigrant better not say it. You know what I mean? You might be a terrorist, you might be a, you know, what you call it, martyrdom, all kinds of crap of disinformation and misinformation that's been provided by the media about Islam, all right? So the bottom line is this, right? Is that the impact of society on the individuals, not just Muslims, but human beings has declined. Look at the period of time we're talking about with the Islamic movement versus same thing with African Americans, okay? How they are proud of their bushes, how they be black and proud, and, you know, and hey, look, you know, they're working together, right? Meetings, conferences, you know what I mean? And things like now to like crazy looking green wigs, you know what I mean? This, you know, all half crazy, you know what I mean? Naked, you know, all these kinds of things as a result of society. The disinformation of society. The principle when I talked to you about the other day was the sociology of an individual and their relationship to the society in which they live. Okay, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he revealed the importance of that. And through the example of the prophet, he showed us that. They offered him a place anywhere to do his religion, you know what I mean? Just don't challenge theirs. Just leave them alone or whatever and do whatever. That was not his mission. His mission was to establish the deen. All right. So we have lost that. And I'm gonna tell you why. Okay. It's because, like, you figure, like oxygen and carbon dioxide, right? They integrate to make you breathe. The same principle Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created an individual into a society system. You see what I'm saying? The society system has an obligation to the individual, and the individual in turn has an obligation to the society. Now, if the society, one of the things that the society has an obligation to the individual, Muslim, non-Muslim, whatever, is accurate, appropriate information, right? Values, morals, right? How they should live, right? Look what the people get in this country, right? Look at that information, okay? You think that Muslims are exempt from that and they live here and a part of that and call themselves American Muslims? You know, it's not realistic to believe that they're not going to be affected by that. Because as I said, for the individual, his attitude, the way he sees himself, right? It's like his principles, they're all integral to the society. That's what he gives back to the society. Well, also with information, society has to give individuals respect and protection. Now, you imagine if a society's interest is for its own interest, and it doesn't take that reciprocal Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created relationship, social relationship, social responsibility intact. What happens to the society system? What happens to the individuals in the society system, Muslim or non-Muslim? They digress. You see Americans digressing. You don't think the Muslims are digressing and they're involved? They're not doing anything special. That's why the Dar said, we got to establish Islam, man. We ain't with these guys. And that's the reality of it. So again, I'm gonna give you a small example, scientific little hypothesis that we used to play with a little bit. And it was like that fact that adolescence for young guys, all right? Adolescence is like age 9 to 18, okay? So you have two ways to look at it. Scientifically, you draw a hypothesis of one or the other. One is it's a straight line, meaning that young brother starts at 9, starts growing, he develops cognitively, right? You know, morally, right? He begins, you know, to increase in his social responsibility values, okay? That is adolescence. That's 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and it's normative. It's called normative growth. So then this young brother, right, is developing himself normally. On the other hand, look at what is called the middle adolescence crisis, where there's a dip. And this is what you see now, a dip. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. During these age period, right, he decreases, right, in his social responsibility, right? He's, you know, problems in school, right? He can't, his parents, he's in conflict with his parents. So in the case of these both scenarios of social responsibility of our adolescents, Muslim, non-Muslim, you understand what I'm saying? This is something that needs to be paid attention to, okay? Because if we don't provide, okay, that support, during that phase of their attainment of social responsibility, they grow up, right? Okay, not caring about nobody but themselves. And that's what you got. Nobody but no response to care for the needy, the care, to be responsible for those who are oppressed, right? This kind of development and social responsibility, it comes to the curve of whether or not you recognize a dip in their development or it's straight across.
That's really interesting.
SubhanAllah.
I'm taking what you're saying as the fact that maybe it's an issue of even ourselves not taking the habit of ensuring that that we do acts of public service together in order to make ourselves aware of the necessity for the responsibility that we have to the community overall. And the illusions that are there that make us think that we can be independent of those things. Mashallah, mashallah, mashallah. Brother Muhammad, I think for myself, just because I am an old head lover, and I can sit around with older brothers because I draw all my spirit and from your generation. I draw all my motivation from your generation. It's I could sit here for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and listen to it. I know Sister Mukhtara has a format, and in respect to that format, I want to give it a floor. But no, I could sit for hours and go through it because the answers to your questions are beautiful and needed, and I hope enough people are actually listening to it, and taking it in, because this is the spirit that brought us in the deen in the first place. And I believe it's the spirit that's going to keep us in the deen. And if we lack it and we lose it, it'll be the spirit that takes us out of the deen. I honestly feel that way.
SubhanAllah. I feel the same way too. And this is why I started BAM, and I've been trying to be consistent with the things that I've been doing, even though some days I'll be like, I'm done. But there's a vision and a mission, you know what I mean? And I have to continue on. And so alhamdulillah, I needed to hear what you said in terms of commitment. And I look to people like you and my parents that are, y'all continuing to do the work. So alhamdulillah, we really appreciate you guys. Alhamdulillah.
I didn't know it was 10 o'clock.
It is. It's getting late. I got some more questions, but I'm not going to hold you. I think that this was a very great interview. I appreciate everything that was said here. And inshallah, everybody that's tuning in took something away, learned from it. And inshallah, we have work to do. As I keep telling my peers, we got work to do. So alhamdulillah, may Allah continue to assist us. Inshallah. Any takeaway advice that you want to give? Anything you want to say, Brother Muhammad?
I think we basically covered, quite a bit. I don't want to drag on anymore, inshallah, with our time. So alhamdulillah, I just hope
maybe we can have another program with some more, young heads, and we can have like a certain topic, and we can have like a, like a nice
young
forum.
heads. Wait, does that make me a young head? Man, I like that.
They said that we're seasoned now.
I want to be a young head.
They said that we're seasoned.
I want to be a young head. Dude, my kids won't call me young head. Brother Muhammad, I got 10 children. They don't call me young head. They call me
SubhanAllah.
Ooh, yeah. But I want to thank you, Brother Muhammad. May Allah continue to bless you for everything that you've done and anything that you keep doing. I see the work that you've been doing. You might not know me, but like as a young kid, I used to always see you at lectures and programs. So you've just always been everywhere, right? Mashallah. And so I just want to say, mashallah, thank you for your commitment and your dedication to the youth, to our community. It's appreciated. And we appreciate that for you. Alhamdulillah.
Weren't you at the basketball tournament in Baltimore?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Alhamdulillah.
Yes, that was our BAM event.
That was a BAM event?
Yeah, we had like a meet and greet weekend. So we had the basketball game,
Right,
and
exactly.
then, yeah, alhamdulillah,
Alhamdulillah.
alhamdulillah. So thank you so much. I
Yes,
appreciate you.
inshallah.
Inshallah. So we're gonna close your dua. You wanna close for with dua?
I think I have to give the floor to Brother Muhammad to close with dua. My senior. I wouldn't feel
أعوذ
comfortable.
بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.